everyone, welcome back to Living Electric. We are back with another EV enthusiast, educator, and a great resource for electric vehicles. We are here with Zack Hurst of EV Resource. Thanks for joining us, Zack.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. This is going to be a great conversation.
Oh, yes, for sure. Yeah, Alex and I always love talking with people who are passionate about electric vehicles.
Definitely.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not sure passionate is quite the most appropriate word. I think obsessed is kind of getting close.
Right.
I can relate to
I
that
think all
on a
three of us
personal level.
passed passionate a long time ago.
Right. Yeah.
I would definitely say so. It's been years of obsession. So speaking of obsession, Zack, do you mind giving our listeners an intro, kind of how you got into the EV space and what you're doing now?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, it's been a shorter journey, actually, than a lot of other people that have been in the business for a decade or more. For me, actually, I've always been into tech and saving money. So naturally, where those two cross when it comes to vehicles, it's EVs all the way. And my wife has been doing food delivery forever. So instead of her turbocharged Volkswagen GTI with a stage 1.5 tune, gas mileage was an issue, especially because it required premium gas. So I'm going, all right, well, we need to get her an EV. Like, I was aware of kind of what was out there, did my research, and so we bought a Chevy Spark EV. 2016, at the time it had like 24,000 miles on it, and EPA range of 82 miles, which I could go out for 4 hours driving around town and be just fine with that. She didn't like it. It wasn't enough range. She was getting very anxious. I'm the kind of guy that when the gas light comes on, I'm going, all right, I got another 30 miles. I'm good. Like, I'll just keep going.
Right.
She's not like that at all. So we got this Spark, and I had done a lot of research, and I'm going, there's still so much I didn't know about electric vehicles that I only learned after buying one and now, having one to own. And I'm going, there needs to be a place where you just go and you find all the answers that you're looking for with the questions of how does this work and what is this, and all of like the EV 101 basic knowledge that people should have either before they buy or right after they buy. And I said, okay, I'm just going to make a web page. It's super simple, whatever. I wasn't originally planning on taking it as far as I have.
Yeah.
So the webpage went live in September of 19. And then in talking with friends and family, they're like, hey, you should probably like start a YouTube or a podcast. And I'm going, I don't know if I have time for that. Well, in February of 20, right before COVID, started the podcast actually at a friend's house. We had built a studio in his basement, and it was wonderful. And then he got COVID, and I couldn't use that space, so I had to build. No. So essentially, I'm in the basement of my house. I built this room specifically for like podcasting and video stuff in the middle of the lockdown.
Awesome.
And started the magazine, and that has been mostly monthly. Some months I just don't have time for it, and it's a struggle. But it's really expanded. I mean, I've got the YouTube channel and the podcast and the magazine, and all of them are targeted towards different things. The webpage is still very much the educational focus, that component, because that's what really has driven me this whole time, is just sharing how awesome EVs are. No matter why you like them, there's so many different reasons. That has been the big push for me. And, so the podcast, it's what? I just finished recording the 118th episode. So that'll be out soon.
Congrats. Congrats.
Well, it's like, oh my gosh, like, have I really been doing this for 2 years? Like, it just doesn't feel like it's been that long. But it started because I bought an EV, and I'm going, I don't know enough. And if I don't know enough and I've done all this research, then I'm sure there's a lot of other people that need to know as well.
Right. Yep.
That's the short story.
That's great.
Oh, that's
so
great.
I'm curious, kind of taking a step back before you guys bought the Spark EV, which I've heard the Spark EV is a blast to drive. I mean, over 400 pound-feet of torque. It's Right to the front wheels?
Yeah. So the 2015s and 16s actually had less than 400. It's 327 foot-pounds of torque. I know. Shame.
Oh, that's
shame.
good information. I didn't know that.
But well, yeah. So the 2014s were slightly different, and then they changed it 2015 and 2016. But they're rare. I mean, only 7,500 or so were ever made. And they're getting now to, like, I just had my battery completely rebuilt because, well, I won't get into that because that'll take an hour to tell you this story. And I've got a video coming up explaining the whole situation. But basically, in April, my battery died completely, like, wouldn't drive, wouldn't charge, nothing. GM told me they weren't going to support the car. I called 4 different dealerships around the country, talked to GM executives, and everybody was like, yeah, it's showing discontinued. You know, we'll have to buy your car back. So I wrote an article. 4 days after that, GM says, oh, no, we're supporting the Spark EV. Everything's fine. Look over there. And they're like, we'll get you back on the road in a couple weeks. We'll send you a battery. Everything will be fine. So it took 4 months, and they never actually sent a battery. They sent all the cells. And the tech at the dealership had to build the entire battery pack in his bay. But he got it done, and Harry over at CMA Colonial Chevy in Chester, Virginia, I owe him a lot because I got my car back, which it is a fun car. I wish it were all-wheel drive and had twice the power, but, you know, you work with what you got. I mean, it cost $11,500. Like, you can't beat that for the money. Of course, now they're pushing 20 because everything's more expensive. But love it. Yeah. Absolutely love the Spark. It's one of the more fun vehicles I've had, and I've had a lot of really, really fun cars, both gas-powered cars and EVs. So, I'll hold on to it for a while now.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's actually what I was curious about. So you mentioned, you know, when you guys were going to get an EV due to, like, the cost of gas for your wife's delivery, business. Can you tell us, like, when you first started looking for, like, an EV, did you know anything about EVs, or is this, like, kind of what, like, opened that gate for you?
So I knew a little bit, because before that, I had been listening to EV News Daily, which is Martin Lee, that podcast, and also the Ride the Lightning podcast with Ryan McCaffrey, which is more of a Tesla podcast, not generic, you know, about all EVs. And I just tend to keep up on technology anyway. So I knew that that's exactly what we wanted. But almost blindly, like, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
And, it's fine. Like, we finally replaced my wife's GTI last year with a Model 3 standard range plus. So now we're just only driving EVs, and the amount of money we're saving on gas alone between the amount of driving she does and what I do, it's just essentially pays for the car, the Spark anyway. Yeah. I mean, the Model 3, that's a little bit more.
We came from Volkswagens too to EVs. I had a Chevy Volt. That was my first plug-in vehicle. And then I got into a car accident, sadly caused battery damage, so I went to a 2017 Golf, Wolfsburg edition, and I loved it. Yeah, and then we had a Jetta, and then we had the ID4. So we lots of experience with Volkswagens. They're good cars.
Yeah, I mean, they know how to make some solid vehicles that, at least with the GTI, you could feel the road. You know, one of the things that I'm a car guy. Like, I love going fast and having fun. So, you know, it was like, I want to be able to feel the road. And actually, you mentioned the ID4. That was a car I was not all that impressed with. I mean, it's a great vehicle for people who they're not passionate about cars. You know, they just want to get from A to B, and an EV, of course, is a great way to do that. But it was underpowered. I was not happy about how they tuned the power delivery. I mean, 200 horsepower is, you know, still a decent amount, but they just don't give it to you in that punchy way that I really like. Yeah. Not everybody's like me, though. You know, the ID4 is perfect for so many people. I mean, they'll sell every one they can make for years.
Right.
Yeah.
I've noticed that with the... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
I was going to say, I've noticed that with a ton of EVs. I just got done driving the Kia EV6 this past week, and a bunch of these EVs coming out, you're completely right. They like tune them in a way that almost mimics a gas vehicle, where they like tune down the torque a little bit so it doesn't like punch as much as when you hit the pedal. Like Tesla, I feel like went the opposite way, and they're like, yeah, you can have it all right away. We don't care if you get in trouble.
Tend to spoil you when it comes to feeling G-forces.
Right.
You know, I mean, I recently had a Polestar 2 for a month, and it's like below 30, they don't give it all to you. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but like it's 400 horsepower and 487 foot-pounds of torque. Like, I want to feel this.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's still quick. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, it runs the quarter in 12.7. I mean, that's respectable for something that heavy, especially.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, when you get into these like high power vehicles, like Alex and I, we've driven like the Plaid. I'm not sure if you had a chance to,
I have not
drive the
driven
Plaid.
one yet. It's on my list, naturally.
It's intense. And, you know, I've driven the Taycan 4S, and, you know, to like get into these EVs that have so much power, it almost made me appreciate the ID4 a little bit more, because like you know, when we first got into it, I agree with you, Zach. Like it is a very numb vehicle. Like I feel like that's like a good way to describe it, but in a good way, because, you know, average drivers, everyday drivers can get into it and can feel comfortable. And that's where, like, I always say it's a perfect everyday EV, because Volkswagen just nailed it. Like it's a simple car. But for performance, you need to go with the all-wheel drive. You get that extra motor, and it gives you so much more power.
I haven't driven the all-wheel drive ID4 yet. So, I mean, and I don't know why, honestly, because Volkswagen, their headquarters, Volkswagen America headquarters, is literally, like, if traffic's okay, maybe an hour and a half from where I live.
Oh,
like,
wow.
They're in Northern Virginia. I'm in Richmond. Like, I just need to contact somebody over at the company and be like, hey, just give me a couple hours. I won't even leave. Like, just give me a couple hours in an empty parking lot. I'll bring my own cones. Like, we'll be fine. You know,
just go knock on the doors.
You know, I was going to do that actually. Cause, not this weekend, cause I'm going to Electrify Expo up in New York, but the following weekend I'm going to Northern Virginia to test drive the Livewire motorcycle.
Oh, cool.
And I was thinking, I'm like, you know, I'm going to be right around the corner. I'll just go say hi, like, just knock on the door, walk in. And I'm like, wait, it's going to be a Saturday. Like, that's not going to work. Nobody's going to be there.
Wait, I wonder if they'll have the all-wheel drive at the Electrify Expo to test drive.
I hope so, but then also I don't, because I'm not going to have a whole lot of time to test vehicles while I'm there. Like, I'm going to be running around gathering, like, business cards and you know, filming things. Like, actually, I'm doing for my Patreon supporters, I'm doing a monthly like water cooler chat where we can all just get together and chat and kind of like this, you know, just talk about EVs, because why not? And so I'm going to do that while I'm there, so that if anybody wants to see what's going on, I can kind of walk them around and be like their eyes and ears on the ground.
That's cool.
So I'm not going to have a whole lot of time to like really go out there and have fun. Even though just being in that environment is infectiously fun anyway. So I'm sure I'm going to have a great time.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be fun in games. I mean, it is going to be work.
Yeah, that's how I feel about Fully Charged Live. Yeah, right, yeah. Hey, when you love what you do, you can't call it work, even if you are working.
Yeah, it's like, okay, now, like, what I really want to do is just figure out how to do EV stuff all day, every day, and then my family would never see me again, I'm sure, because I just get sucked into it. But it's like if I could figure out some way, like, I'm sure you guys are familiar with Motor Week. With John Davis, he hosts that. It's been like the longest running car show, like consumer car show, and I'm going, okay, I need somebody to like get me involved with doing that for EVs. Like we need to create an EV only car show that's on like PBS, like that kind of serious, not just YouTube, but I mean like really get it out there. And I'm going, I want to do that so badly. Yeah. I have no idea how, but I mean, it's like, okay. So, you know, it's like that would be all day, every day. Like I don't no problem. Just send me a car, test it, review it, send it back, like call it a life.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what we're working towards, right, Alex?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, we're starting to finally kind of figure out the like certain channels you got to go through and the like the media contacts and like anything else, it's like who you know in the industry that could hook you up with a car for a week versus versus trying to get one from a personal owner or like other stuff. Like,
I mean, access to vehicles, I had no idea it would be such a challenge.
Yes.
You know, because I'm like,
I agree.
Right, the only vehicles I've really tested have, like, there's been a couple from manufacturers, like the Arcimoto FUV. I had that for a month.
Really?
And I mean, it was like I asked for a couple hours to drive it around DC, and it was interesting because the executive that I guess had his on loan from the company, like it was still owned by Arcimoto, but it was one that he used, and he actually went to Eugene, Oregon for the opening of the ramp, their new manufacturing headquarters, and ended up being out there longer than he had originally anticipated. So I ended up getting the FUV longer than anticipated. And
wow,
like this was February, and I literally every single day, all I could think about was getting off work with my main job, getting home and driving this in the cold, in the rain. I didn't care. Like I've never fallen in love with a vehicle as quickly as I did that. Like, it was just spectacular. Wow. I love those things. They're amazing.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
But aside from that, like, access to vehicles, it's like, okay, who do I know that has an EV? Or, like, knock on dealerships, be like, can I borrow this for a little bit? And they're like, why? And we're like, I just want to take some photos and videos and drive it around. And they're like, well, how does that benefit us? And I'm like, I'll mention you.
Yeah.
I'll tell everybody I got it from you, and they can call you up if they want to buy it. Like, dealers, or of course, now they don't have anything. I mean, there's no inventory anywhere, so it's like, okay, that's just, it's tough. It's tough.
That's certainly the other struggle, because it's like the goal of it is obviously to help us sell vehicles, right? Like they want to sell more cars, but they have no problem selling cars right now. So it's like they don't have as big of an incentive.
They don't need my help anyway.
Right.
So, you know, to jump back into like EV Resource and like, you know, like how long you've been doing this, I'm curious, when you first got, you know, your Spark and like you've come this way by doing this for like a few years, what are some things that you've learned as a car enthusiast that like surprised you with like EV ownership?
Ooh, tires cost more than I remember. That would be one. Or at least you go through them a lot quicker. Right. In fact, that's the only money I've put into the Spark in 3 years, and I've driven 55,000 miles on this car, is the big thing. Like, I've gone through 4 sets of front tires, because when you have that much torque and you like to use it, you know, the tires spin, and then, you know, so that's something that I wasn't really expecting that. Like, people talk about that, but you don't really get it until you go through 4 sets of front tires. And I'd never replaced the rear tires on that car. Just the fronts.
Wow.
Well, that amount of pound-feet of torque, you know, that torque going right to the front wheels, like, I could see you eating through those.
You know, it's an interesting car, because I still don't understand exactly why Chevy made that car. Like, if it's a compliance car, then why give it that much power? Like, and it's front-wheel drive. It's built on the gas-powered car platform. So, like, the battery's underneath the rear seat where the gas tank would be. Like, they just... Yeah. It's just so many questions when you start to actually think about the engineering of it, going, why did you do this? Now, granted, I'm not complaining. Like, it's wonderful. But it's just like, okay, it's interesting. It is a very unique car. And that in of itself has taught me a lot. Like, I have learned how to drive much more efficiently with an EV. Like, I don't get range anxiety because you learn the vehicle that you're in, so you just figure out, like, I'm doing math in my head as I'm driving along. Most people probably don't. But, you know, I'm more than willing to do that, you know, to figure out, okay, well, how much battery do I have left? What kind of miles per kilowatt hour am I getting? Like, how much battery am I using? And then just do the math to figure out, you know, where I expect to run out. And will I get to a charger before then? And not always. Like, I have been, there was a period of time when my battery was starting to go bad, and I noticed that, like, I wasn't getting range, and the little guessometer, if we'll call it that, was not the most accurate on the bottom end of the battery. I had a tow strap that I kept with me in the car, and I'd be like 2 miles from home. I mean, it was always close. And I'd call my wife and get her to come tow me back home and tow charge as I'm going, which she loved. Let me tell you, I'm glad that the battery finally died, because there was not too many more times she would have been willing to do that. But I mean,
That's love. That's love.
Somehow I'm not deserving of it, but I'm not worthy, but she loves me anyway. But yeah, I mean, just the things that you learn along the way, like charging and why you shouldn't fast charge all the time. And why, when you have a car with such a small range, you need a fast charge all the time anyway, if you're out and about doing like long distance stuff. Granted, you probably shouldn't drive an 82-mile car long distance, but I did anyway. I went on a 550-mile road trip, and that was, I think, 15 or 16 different fast charging sessions.
Oh, wow.
You know, the Spark, you drive for an hour and you charge for 20 minutes, and then you drive for an hour and charge for 20 minutes. But the charging is not like 10 to 80. It's 0 to 100.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But Brandon, I got sidetracked. I do that.
That's okay.
I answered your question. I don't know.
I think you did. I'm guilty of that too. It's funny because Alex and I've talked about this before. When it comes to driving efficient with an EV, I feel like when I had a gas car, I was so paranoid about fuel economy and making sure I'm driving efficient. But now that I have an EV, I just speed everywhere, and I don't break the law, but I like to drive pretty fast, so my efficiency rating is not very good.
I get that. With the Spark, I drive very efficiently. With the Model 3, I don't even pay attention anymore, unless we're going down to the beach, which is 150 miles or so. I don't even pay attention to how much battery's in there, because it doesn't matter. That is one thing that has surprised me, even being in the quote unquote in the industry. I mean, I'm just a guy in his basement recording a podcast every week. I don't know if that counts as being in the industry.
I think it does.
Okay, yes, all right, good. If I've got your seal of approval, then I'm golden. It's great. But I have an EV that I don't think about charging. It's never, I don't even think about it. I come home, I plug in, I'm doing other things. I never give it thought. We drove the Model 3 to Miami and back. We stopped because we needed to. We plugged in wherever we stopped, because of course there's superchargers everywhere, so that was easy. Mm-hmm. When we were done, we unplugged and kept going. We never ever waited for the car to charge more than we needed to stop for 2,000 miles. Why is this not more widely adopted? EVs, you can literally get to the point where you don't even think about it, really. 200, and our car is not the long range Model 3. It's the shortest. It's 240 technically at this point. We've had some degradation of the battery over the last year, but it's don't even think about it. That is something that it still surprises me.
Yeah.
Because the conversations I'm sure you guys have with everybody about EVs is, well, how far does it go? How long does it take to charge? Blah, blah, blah. And it's I don't care anymore. I mean, I do. But for my own car, it's I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
Which is the way it should be, right?
I just go and I plug in, and I don't mind waiting if I had to.
Yeah.
Not a big deal.
And I think that's a huge part that I think us in the industry need to do a better job of educating people about, is hey, it is not something you need to think about once you've driven it for a month or even a week nowadays. Charging has gotten really good. If you've got a proper home setup, day to day, generally you do not need to worry about it at all. It's a non-issue.
Yeah, and honestly, if there's such a thing as EV privilege, then I think what you just said and everything that I've been saying is really coming from that position, because we can charge at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Fresh off of talking with the guys over at Orange, obviously there's a huge amount of people in this country that cannot charge overnight while they're sleeping.
Right. Yep.
So we're the lucky ones.
Yeah.
I should probably watch what I say to who I say it to, because it's like, okay, quit flaunting.
Yeah.
Like, wow,
No,
special you can charge at home.
Right.
It's like, now granted, like, and this is something I tell everybody, because my charging situation here at home is very unique.
Okay.
I'm renting this house. I installed the charger, but I didn't wire anything to the panel. Originally, when we got the Spark, I was running I think it was rated for 20 amps, but an extension cord, literally from around the back of the house from the laundry room. And when we got the Model 3, we did upgrade to a level 2 EVSE for outside, but I'm still running an extension cord from the dryer socket out the window around the back of the house to plug in, and like we never charge it greater than 24 amps because I don't want to like cause any issues with the dryer circuit.
Right.
But it's like I didn't spend $1,000 to pay an electrician to come install something and hang it on the wall and do all of this, that, and everything else. Like, yeah, I spent $300 on an extension cord and $300 on this. It's not a smart wall box. I mean, it's not Wi-Fi. It doesn't keep track of anything. Like, it's just a fancy switch on the wall.
Right.
But it works.
Yep.
Like, and we have 2 EVs, and we're able to keep both of them charged and do laundry, mind you, because in this case it does use that circuit. And I've never had a problem with really any of that. So you don't like the whole charging thing. Like you can get creative. You don't have to, fall in line with what everybody says. Oh, it'll be $1,000 to have somebody install a circuit for you, and it's like, no, it doesn't.
No.
And you don't need a NEMA 1450 either. Like you can work off a 20 or 30 amp for most people. Is probably enough.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. I know Alex can attest to the unique charging setup.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen my video on my like home garage setup, because we rent right now and it's a detached garage and there's a single outlet in that garage and the garage door opener is plugged into it. So
that is a unique situation. I'm going to have to go check out that video because I haven't seen it, but now you've got me curious.
Yeah. I'm an electrical engineer too, so I like made sure electrically it was all going to work. Mm-hmm. But basically, I put a splitter in there, have an extension cord running off of it. The garage door opener is still plugged into it, and I just run my mobile adapter off of a regular like 120 volt outlet.
And I mean, that's actually not as bad as some, because that even though that's 110, but it's still going to be its own like. Do you know what else is on that circuit? Is it only the garage door opener?
Yeah, it's only the garage door opener. So I like double.
You're fine. Yeah, it's a dedicated circuit practically.
Exactly.
No problem at all.
And theoretically, people have pointed this out. I could get a NEMA like 520 and get even like faster charging off of it, because the garage opener pulls like less than an amp. It's like, yeah.
Because a 520 is still the 110, but it's the 20 amp versus the 15, right?
Correct.
See, I'm learning all of the electrical stuff too.
Yep, yeah. Which for people listening that aren't like engineers, definitely don't need to know this stuff.
Yeah.
So this is all the nerdiness coming out.
I am like a technical person. I love spreadsheets and numbers, and I geek out on all of this stuff. So yeah, anybody that's listening, you don't have to be like this in order to love EVs and drive them. Like this is unique. This is very special.
Right.
I think this is why Alex and I balance each other out so frequently. Because there's been many guests we've had on our show where Alex and our guests get really involved with like engineering terms, and I'm just over here nodding, and Alex will be like, "You got that, Brian?" I'm like, "Got it. I got it."
So I don't know what just happened, but I think I lost my video.
Yeah, it looks like it froze again.
Yeah, you're frozen on our end. So
what I love most about EVs is, because I mean, like I was saying, and I don't remember if this was before or after you started to hit record, but there's so many different reasons to love EVs. Right. There's people that are in it because they want to go green, and it's all about the climate and that. Separate from that, you could also have the whole clean air aspect or saving money. Those are all great reasons. And certainly when I first got an EV, it was all about saving money. But now it's all about having fun. Like I said, I'm a car guy. I just want to go fast and have fun and do all of that. And like EVs do that really well. And
Right.
I've got a relationship with a racetrack here locally. It's about an hour north of me that I started actually last year. I held an event there and started using the track to record some like hot lap videos and test some EVs,
cool.
performance tests and stuff. But that's
awesome.
like become my little playground. So, you know, I've got a relationship where I can basically go there anytime it's not being used, like especially during the week, and just go and record stuff and run around and have fun and do that. And I'm like, more people need to know about how much fun EVs have. Like, I might be crazy, but I'm trying to convert like the cars and coffee crowd. Like,
Hey, I think that's a good crowd to go after with education and getting conversations started.
it's the people that are like, oh, I'll never get an EV, and I'm like, we're gonna talk. I'm like, here, I'll give you a ride. Like, I'm doing this event again this year. Actually, in like 4 weeks, September 18th. And I'm like, I've had people respond on social media, like they're putting stuff on the posts of like, oh, you know, powered by coal and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, like with this anyway, like the brand of this event is not like, I don't care. It could be powered by coal, oil, or small kittens. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, we want to go fast and have fun and come on out. And like, oh, it doesn't sound like fun. And I'm like, let me take you for a ride around the track.
Right.
I guarantee you'll be either having the time of your life or be scared, because I scared a few people last year. But they loved it. Like, it's like a roller coaster without going up and down. You know, you're going left and right. But, I mean, that I can't tell you how many people from the event last year that told me they wanted to go buy an EV because of that. And I'm like,
Wow.
That's the reason. That is exactly why I want to do more, because I love that. Like, okay, you're sold on it. I didn't need to sell it. Like, obviously, you know, butts in seats, it sells themselves.
Right.
Man, it's just that I want to grow that bigger just so I can affect more people, you know, really
Definitely.
get it in people's heads that, hey, you know what? You can have fun. They're not all the same. They definitely do have, quote unquote, soul, a soul for the vehicle, if you will. And I'm not talking just about Kias. Like, sorry. I had to throw the cheesy joke in there.
That's okay. Alex is used to it from me, so that's
Definitely.
perfect.
There you go. No, side note, I one of these days I'm going to dress up in a devil costume, and I'm going to go and find one for sale and shoot a video of like the devil trying to buy a Kia Soul. Just because I think that's hilarious.
I want to ask to be a part of that right now.
All right, well, we gotta start hunting for, and it's got to be a Soul EV, you know,
Yes.
rare,
Yeah.
not the gas powered. I mean, nobody, like the devil wouldn't even want a gas powered like Kia Soul. But
I think that would be the great concept for the video. We could have a gas soul, and the devil would be like, no, I want that soul.
love it. Of course, now that we've told everybody, you know,
Yeah,
it's
right.
out there.
It's out
Right.
there.
No longer just our idea anymore. We're gonna see that video pop up in 2 days.
Yep. Exactly.
That's okay. I'll give that one away. Now I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, well, yeah, just having fun. And
Yeah, do you
and
wanna
talking to
give
people
us-
like,
Did you
Yeah,
want to give us the
yeah.
pitch
So-
on your event, maybe? We can segue
oh
into
man,
that.
this year is going to be awesome. Like last year, I'll start at last year, give you some context.
Definitely.
I met a gentleman actually who reached out after listening to my podcast for a while. Greg, awesome guy. He's like big into motorsport and also having fun and just go fast. And he wanted to really put on a massive event like the Olympics, but for electric vehicles, like that kind of thing. And I'm going, all right, well, we need to start small, like proof of concept. So he actually reached out to the racetrack first and made like initial contact and set things up. And we had 4 months to plan, 1 month to market, and we had 462 people there.
Wow.
Which
That's awesome.
That just, it was one of the biggest nightmares. Like the amount of stress I went through to get that to happen last year was incredible. And I wasn't going to do it again. Like at the end of the day, I was exhausted, and I'm like, you know what? Like it just was in my mind at that point. I was like, this isn't worth it. I'm not doing this again. Like, no. But then every single person came up to me and was like, that was so much fun. When are you going to do it again? Like all the vendors, the sponsors, everybody's like, hey, if you're doing it, like we're in, like, let's go. Let's like, and I'm going, okay, we'll do it again. And, you know, we've had 12 months to plan, or 11 months technically. And we got sponsorship from the local utility companies. So like Dominion Energy, which is like the massive utility. Right. We got them on board. Rappahannock Electric Cooperative, which is the local distribution. They're on board. Old Dominion Electric Cooperative, which they're like intermediate like size in terms of their, you know, they're not small, but they're not like Dominion Energy. They're on board. You know, just getting the support of the fuel providers, if you will. And then also one of the big things that's going to make a difference for this year is we're going to have temporary DC fast charging installed at the track for the event.
Wow.
DC America is a company based in West Virginia. And actually currently they are the only non-Tesla fast chargers in Virginia is at their location. Like that's it.
Wow.
So, you know, they're on board. They make these awesome like pods that, I mean, I won't get into like their whole sales pitch, but they're going to bring one of their pods out. So we're going to have 2 tritium fast chargers right there at the track so that people can like just recharge and keep going and having fun. But to the point of this year's event, the audience is twofold, right? The people with EVs and people without. So last year was all about people with EVs. I didn't really do anything for education and conversion efforts, if you will. This year's different. You know, we have Generation 180. They are coming in and doing an EV owner panel twice, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. We're going to have, you know, an indoor stage that we'll be able to utilize for other things like EV 101 basic stuff. So there's an EV education zone, if you will, and that's going to be the focus, is just educating people, giving people a quiet place to ask questions and have conversations with owners as well as experts and really get an idea of what it is to own an EV. And then you go outside, and that's where I want to be. Because I want to have fun and I want to go fast. So Dominion Raceway, it's a 2-mile, 13-turn road course. Wow. And it's slower speed, so you can really get a lot of fun throwing a car around the corners, especially like my Spark. I put semi-slicks on it, and it just handles like it's so much
awesome.
And so, like, we're going to have EV owners it's paced laps. So there will be a lead car and maybe 4 or 5 cars that are driven by EV owners behind them. They're going to get a chance to drive at speed on the road course. They can give rides to attendees. So, like, I've got a whole bunch of EV owners that have already said, yeah, sign me up. I want to give rides to people. Like, I just think that's awesome. Yeah. We're going to have e-mobility zone. So if people have like scooters or one wheels or things like that, like a place for them to go and play, like I've got a little electric scooter. It's only 250 watt, but whatever. I'll let people ride around on that all day long. I don't care. You know, something that they can just have fun with. And then the front straight in the afternoon, we're shutting down the road course, and the front straight turns into a no prep 8th mile drag strip. So we're going to, like we did that last year too, and we're just going to let people, you know, heads up drag racing, you know, it's not timed or anything, but, It's just, is my car faster than your car? And like that question has existed since the creation of the second car, like in history. So, it's like for EV owners, I want to give them a place and a chance to play and have fun and experience their own car in a way that they probably don't get a chance to on a regular basis or ever. It was interesting. We last year had a conversation with Steve Huff while we were trying to plan things, and we wanted to get him out there. He's currently I believe he still has the record for the fastest electric dragster in the quarter mile, like 202 miles an hour or something like that.
Wow.
But I mean, he's been in the drag racing world forever, and got it hooked up with AEM EV and Holly, because Holly owns them. And wouldn't you know it, Holly High Voltage happened, like not directly after, but soon enough after we had a conversation sharing our idea. And I'm like, they had to have been talking about that before then, but Holly High Voltage is kind of like the vision of what I'm trying to create. It's just they've got money and connections, and I'm working on that. But nobody else is doing anything on the East Coast like this. That's the thing. Yeah. Like, yes, Electrify Expo is going to be awesome. I shout out to those guys. They're amazing, and I respect everything that they're doing, and it's awesome. But you're not running around a racetrack with your own car. And that's like, I want to create the event that I would want to go to. And the problem with that is I'm going to be there, but I'm not going to be having fun playing. Like, I'm going to be working like last year, helping and answering questions and this, that, and everything else. But it's like, I've essentially started this event now that it looks like it will be annual. Next year, I'm hoping to make it a 2-day event with possible electric cars during the day and an electric music festival in the evening.
Oh, cool.
Incorporate that element,
Cool.
and just build it bigger. This year I'm expecting more than 462 people, probably closer to 1,000, based on, pre-order of the tickets so far is going well, and we're really ramping up the marketing. So I think that we'll have a decent amount of people there, but, at the end of the day, we could have one person show up, but if they leave with a smile on their face asking when next year is going to be, then I think it's mission success.
Yeah.
So that's the point, is to educate people who don't know what they want to know. They're curious and want more of an experience, but then also just to go fast and have fun.
Right.
Well, I think that's what's so important about like everything that like all of us are doing with like the EV space, is giving the opportunity for people who have questions to feel comfortable with asking those questions and getting solid answers, like in a non-judgmental area, because I know a lot of people are afraid to ask those questions. So I think it's important to give them that opportunity to do so, but also experience what an EV can do for them. Both on a racetrack as well as, drag strips or wherever, like, I think that's awesome what you're doing, Zach, especially on the East Coast. We don't really get that here.
There's nothing over here.
Nothing.
Like, my entire EV story when it comes to outside of just owning one is all about creating the things that I want that I didn't see anywhere. Like, that's how it all started. Right. And it's like, okay, well, nobody else is doing this, so I guess I will.
Yeah.
It's just, it's kind of weird, kind of doing things that way. But like in this country anyway, the East Coast, nothing's really happening over here. Like 70% of the EVs are all in California. I mean, and most of those are Teslas. So it's like, when you look at what's going on in this country, for those of us who are in it day in and day out, sure, it might seem like there's a lot of progress made and things are moving very quickly. And that's true. I mean, things are moving a lot quicker than even I thought they would. But you step outside of that into, quote unquote, the normal world, and you realize how much work we all have to still do. Like, I forget who I was talking to the other day, but no joke, they asked me, "Oh, does Tesla make electric vehicles?" And I'm just Like,
Wow.
you gotta hold your tongue, and you're like,
Yeah.
yes, yes, they do. In fact, they only make electric vehicles. Wow, really? Yes. It's like,
Yep.
or people that just have these preconceived notions about electric vehicles that are 5 years old. You know, they're telling me things, and I'm like, well, that was true. Absolutely. It's not now. So, yeah, you can go on a road trip in an EV, and it doesn't have to be a Tesla, and you can still do it relatively well.
Right.
Like, now that I've got my Spark back, I'm going to revisit my idea of driving up to Niagara Falls and back. Well, that'll be 2,000 miles, roughly. I mean, 1,800 or so. And I'm like, it's not the car designed for that. But the fact that it can be done with, like, the fact that you can use the wrench to hammer the nail is proof that the wrench is worthy, if you will. The Spark is a city car, but I want to take this everywhere. And yes, I'll stop and charge a lot, and that's okay. Like, I'm not young anymore. Like, I'm not old, granted, but I'm not like super young. I can't drive for 15 hours straight. Like, I need to stop roughly every hour, hour and a half or so. So it's like, okay, I think most people are probably like that. Yes, there are people that I've met that they drive from Richmond to Florida and back every single week, and they stop once for 10 minutes to get gas, and they just go. And I'm like, then don't get an EV. Like, there is not an EV for you right now.
Yep.
And that's okay. Like, 90% of other people probably would do just fine, even if they only added an EV to their current stable, if you will. Like, you don't need to replace any car that you have. Once you get the EV, you'll probably end up replacing or getting rid of the other car eventually anyway. Like, like, I had a Honda Civic that after we got the Spark, and my wife basically said that it was going to be my car instead of hers. Well, I didn't drive the Civic but twice around the neighborhood over the course of a year. And that wasn't necessarily because I planned it that way. It was just I liked driving the Spark more. So it's like, I mean, even with a $40,000 option, and you can get EVs for that price, like, the amount of money that you save on gas and maintenance will probably pay for itself. Like, it's almost like so many different options. It's like you got a free car almost. I mean, like, obviously, yeah, there's insurance and maybe property taxes in places that have that, but it's like, man, people, I just don't think they're giving it enough thought to really go, okay, this is something that's going to work, because it will. It absolutely will.
Yeah. And I think that's another important thing, like, what we're all doing is, like, we're documenting and displaying that you can live with these cars. And I think that the barrier that a lot of people have is that they really just need to experience it. Not just like a 30-minute test drive at the dealership or wherever, but like actually live with the car for like, a week or like a month. And that's where I really think people will begin to realize, like, wow, this is like not as hard as I thought it was. Like, this is doable. I can absolutely live with this. And I think that that's what's so important about, like, what we're all doing is that we're displaying that to people. At least the people who are open to look for it.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we need more of that. Somebody the other day was found another EV podcast, and they were telling me, like, they're like, aren't you afraid of all this competition? And I'm going, first of all, I'm not big enough to be considered competition for anybody. And I look at it as more as collaboration, because we all, we're different voices. We might appeal to different people who hear what we have to say. And the problem with the world these days is everybody is attracted to and focused on negative about any topic. Well, that's true about EVs too. So you're going to have the false claims, the negative stuff, all the FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt for people who haven't heard that acronym. That's what gets spread. So for the true EV owner stories or experiences or people that are and I'm not afraid to say it, biased in a positive way, we need to be 10 times as loud or 10 times as many of us. And I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I can be loud, but I think we need more of us. You know,
Right.
there needs to be more people that are out there spreading the EV gospel, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think Alex knows that I can be. Yeah. He's already nodding. But it's so true. I mean, like, I think the more, the more we dispel those myths and the misconceptions and provide factual experience and education to drivers and consumers, the better off we're going to be. It's just the only downside with this industry right now is that it is still kind of like the wild, wild west. And there's so many companies who think that they know what they're doing versus other companies who think they know what they're doing. And it just, you kind of meet in the middle. And I feel like that's kind of where all of us lie, where we're like, well, you're not exactly right. You're not right. Let's talk about it. Let's have the conversations and get that information out there. Because it's confusing. A lot of people who are open to an EV for whatever reason, they might get into this and go, what? Like, I don't know what J1772 is or CHAdeMO. Like, it's, kilowatts, amps, voltage. Like, it's a lot to learn. So,
and I think that might be the biggest barrier to entry. And some people say price and, charging infrastructure. And at least that's what the public thinks they need to go EV. But what you just said, I think, is way more important, because when you go and buy a car, you don't need to learn a new language and different terminology. Like,
Right. Yep.
Like, there are industry experts that I read articles and I'm like, how did this get past the editor? They're still confusing kilowatts and kilowatt hours.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, okay, guys, like, there is so much for people to learn if they want to about EVs before and then after buying one. I am waiting for the point where people buy an EV not because it's an electric car. They're not even looking for an EV. They just, that fits what their needs are the best, so that's what they buy. I've met one person that did that. They bought a Mustang Mach-E almost accidentally. Like, it was available. They liked it. They bought it. The salesperson must have been horrible, because they didn't once ask, like, hey, do you know where you're going to charge this, until after she had already bought it. Like, she's getting ready to drive away in her brand new Mach-E. And not once did the salesperson or her think about charging.
Wow.
So that's great, kind of. Like, the fact that she wanted to buy that is great. The fact that that conversation wasn't happening is not great. But, like, I just think that highlights, it's not just the potential owners, it's everybody. Like, everybody needs to learn so much. And I'm going to throw myself into that, too, because that's why I listen to, like, a billion podcasts. Like, I think I probably listen to more EV podcasts than anybody I know. And I think on Twitter, Kyle had asked, like, what are your favorite EV podcasts? And I literally ran out of room in my tweet. Like, I could have added a couple more, but I ran out of characters just doing listing the EV podcasts I listen to, because especially these days, there's so much going on with it now. Like, 3 years ago, there wasn't much going on. So it was a lot easier to keep up with, like, specs on vehicles and who's coming out with this and that, and, like, when is that going to be available to order. You can't keep track of that now. There's so much going on. It's like, I don't even post, like, articles that I find as much as I used to, because I'm like, I can't keep up.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's one benefit of Alex and I both working in the EV industry, is, like, our full-time job, like, revolves, especially mine. Like, I do research on the entire industry for my job. So, like, I keep track of that. But, like, the thing is that, like, I feel like, especially recently, I'm like, well, I'm not posting anything of value on Twitter, because, like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, I already know this. So it's like, it's hard to, it's hard to share that, because it's like, there's so much, like, knowledge that I'm withholding for the day.
Right.
But it's I mean,
it's a full-time job.
Yes, it is. It is. And you were talking about, like, education, both from, like, the consumer and the dealership side. That's where, ChargeWay comes in with our beacons at dealerships and working with our dealership programs, working with utilities. because it starts with the dealership experience. When you're explaining charging to a driver, it can be complicated for
Right.
sales staff. So like if they don't know that knowledge, they're starting those drivers off on the wrong foot, or on the wrong wheel. I was trying to think of a good EV pun, but that Alex is cringing. But it's true. Like, education is key for EV adoption, and I will say that until my last breath. Like, it's so true. Education is so important on all aspects.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, I just scoot over. Like, I don't know. I think having an EV podcast, and I'm going to say this more for your listeners than I do for the fact that I also have a podcast, but like, it's so important to just reach even one person that might be considering, like, I'm sure you guys get these messages like, hey, I went and bought this and it's because I was listening to you guys, or I met you in this conversation. And it's like, man, that is like, I didn't sell that car. I didn't make a commission on it, but gosh, it's such a good feeling. I'm sure you guys get that a lot. And like, we all have our down days, and that, for me anyway, like, that just helps me push through all of that, going, all right, I feel like I'm doing like good work here, like,
right.
Yep, I mean, shoot, I've listened to your podcast for, I don't know, time merges all together, but it's been a while. And, every EV podcast I listen to is a little different, and the format might be a little different, but the people are different. And so like, there's different ideas and different concepts and different things that come across. Like, I don't know that anybody has time to listen to 20 different EV podcasts, but certainly if you only had time for 2, I can think of the people that are listening to this one, and then one other podcast they might be interested in. But I mean, that's important. And I would encourage everybody listening to this to share, not just because I'm on this episode, but all of it. Share the podcasts with your friends, with your family, with people that, like, people are talking about electric vehicles. Every conversation about electric vehicles should include a resource that can help people learn more about them.
That's a great point.
Whether it's my podcast or your podcast. Like, I genuinely don't care if people listen to my podcast, because people do. Somehow they like it. It's like, okay, I'm still humbled by that, because it's like, why would anybody listen to me? It's like, I'm not a special guy. I just happen to love talking about electric vehicles, and apparently people want to listen to that. So fine.
And I think that's what matters. I mean, just talking to you now, Zach, like, I can tell just how passionate you are for this, and like, passionate and obsessed. I'm going to throw that back in there too. Go for full circle. But I mean, like, the effort that you're putting into, like the EV Fall Festival and your website, the magazine, like, it really does prove to like your listeners and like the people who are shopping for an EV that this is what you care about. And I think that comes across really strongly.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's hard to hide that. Like,
we can relate.
Well, it's just funny because there's always a few people in your life that are like, all right, I know you're into EVs. I would like to talk about something else.
Right.
And then that's followed by a couple hours of silence, because I'm like, I don't know what else to talk about. Like,
I got nothing.
It's like, oil subsidies? Like, what do you... It's like, okay, I don't know. Or you talk about the tax credit. Like, people are like, oh, the Inflation Reduction Act passed. And I'm like, yeah. And then, like, I just go off on this, 2-day tangent about why it's horrible. I'm like, yeah, actually, I mean, and we don't have to get into this if you don't want to, but Joe Boras, I've heard him say it a couple times that he thinks Toyota had a big hand in influencing the wording in this with Joe Manchin being that they have a manufacturing plant in West Virginia that they announced a $240 billion investment to create hybrid powertrains at this manufacturing plant in West Virginia. And I'm going, that 7 kilowatt hour minimum battery level, like size that was written into the bill. Do you know any manufacturers that make like plug-in hybrids that have like just over 7 kilowatt hour batteries? And I'm like, like he made such a good point. And then I started looking into it a little bit further because, of course, I always want to dig further than just taking whatever I hear as, gospel. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is a conspiracy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to wear a tinfoil hat for a little while. Like, oh my goodness. Yeah. But it's just fun.
We always joke that we're going to do Living Electric After Dark. I feel like we should do an episode on like EV conspiracy theory.
That would be
because that's a really solid one. Like,
like honestly, that's one where I'm going. When the bill was part of the Build Back Better, and it got shot down essentially by Joe Manchin because of, and then all the changes in wording between what was proposed before and now what has been signed into law, and then you look at like, okay, overnight, dozens of EV models were no longer eligible for the tax credit starting right now. Yeah. And the good stuff doesn't hit us until January. I'm like, oh man, they really did a number on it. And what's weird is I still don't even know everything that is in that bill. Like I've read the actual language like 3 or 4 times now. I still can't make sense of it. It's like, oh my goodness. But you know what? We got to work with what we got. And I like the general direction. Like in 2030, I'm probably going to look back and be like, oh, no, it's fine. Everything's great. But, right now I'm going, that doesn't help.
Yeah.
Right.
Nope. Right. Not at the moment.
I would almost rather not have any EV tax credit at all. Like, what are we trying to stimulate here? We don't need any more demand. We don't.
Yeah.
Like, we've reached the point where we're no longer only early adopters that are buying EVs. Now we're early mass market. Mm-hmm. We don't need advertisement for these vehicles. We don't need tax credits, although I'll take it. Like, I mean, well, I'm not going to be buying an EV anytime soon because I've got... my next one's going to be an Aptera, and that doesn't qualify. Because it doesn't have enough wheels, which I don't care. Like... I will tell you, I am into, like, the strange EVs. Like, you've got the ID4, and that's wonderful, and there's going to be millions of those on the road one day, I hope. Or like the Lightning, the F-150 Lightning, they're going to sell millions of those eventually. Or Teslas. Like, I used to really, really love Tesla as a company and loved the vehicles, and then I bought one, and I'm like, oh, okay, they're great, but they're not special anymore. Like, they're just normal. And I mean, that's necessary, but I like the weird EVs. Yeah. Like the Spark is a weird one, or the Arcimoto FUV. It's a 3-wheeled electric motorcycle, but you've got a windshield and a roof, and it's like, what is it? It's not a car, but it's not a motorcycle. It's like the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. Or the Aptera, or I don't know if you guys have seen the Nimbus. It's a tilting 3-wheeled single seat, like urban runabout. I don't even know if they're in production yet, but like, I like the weird ones. So I ordered an Aptera because it made the most sense for what I wanted. Lots of attention because it looks like a spaceship. Right. So, when I'm driving down the road, I'm going to have EV resource on the side, and people are going to be like, what is that? And we're like, well, how many hours do you have to talk? Not a big deal.
That's awesome.
But, I mean, I'm sure we're running into time. I haven't even been paying attention.
Oh,
no, you're good.
Getting me to stop is hard. Trust me.
Well, when you're so excited about a topic, trust us. Like, time can just melt.
Right.
When you
Which
talk,
one of you has to edit this? I'm so sorry.
That'll probably.
I'm going to point at Alex.
No worries.
But yeah, Zach, to wrap up, do you mind kind of giving our listeners an idea where we can, where they can find you on social and learn more about the EV Fall Festival?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to answer that in backwards. So the Electric Vehicle Fall Festival, if you search that on Google, Electric Vehicle Fall Festival, you'll find it. I believe the socials on Twitter and Instagram are at EVFestUS. Don't quote me on that because I don't actually. I should know that probably. But the webpage, electricvehiclefest.com, and they can find out more information and then click on the links that'll direct you to the Eventbrite page for tickets. It's $15. Like, I'm not trying to like gouge people for pricing, but I am trying to like break even. I don't want to come out of pocket thousands of dollars to do this, because as much as I would, I'm not in the position to do that. So please come out so that I don't spend money on this. No, but that's the easiest way, is just Electric Vehicle Fall Festival. Honestly, EV Resource is much more active online. So searching that anywhere and you will find like EV Resource. I think I've done well enough with the SEO that like nothing else really pops up. But we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I think that's it for those. Or ev-resource.com is the webpage, and there's a whole bunch of stuff on there. A blog when I find time to write different articles and things. The EV 101 section for people that are curious or don't know a whole lot. A writer at Clean Technica actually helped write many of the original articles for the webpage. It's not just me rambling in text form. I did have some help in the very beginning. That's probably the best way, or people can email me at hello@ev-resource.com. That's probably the best email address. But
awesome.
Got the podcast. People can listen if they want to listen to a second EV podcast. And that's on all of the major podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Amazon, that's everywhere.
Wherever podcasts are sold.
I use BuzzFeed for my hosting, so they just push it out everywhere. Like, honestly, it probably goes to podcast platforms I've never even heard of, and that's okay.
Awesome.
So
that's
spread the word of the EV. That's what matters.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's what matters.
We'll have all that linked down in the description as well, so it's easier for people to click on too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, after trying to make heads or tails of what I just said, they're going to need a link to click on.
No, that was great.
That's okay.
We love it.
Awesome.
Well, guys,
thank you so much, Zack.
An absolute pleasure.
Definitely.
Kindred spirits. I really feel like if you wanted to make a long form 4-hour podcast, we could do that. However, in the interest of not causing much suffering for the people that have to hear me anyway, we should probably cut it.
And I will be reaching out to you about the devil commercial that we talked about.
Dude, yes. Honestly, there's a few other things that I feel like we should talk about that might require some NDAs if we wanted to get serious with it. But there were a couple times during the conversation with this today, I'm like, ooh, okay, I can't say that out loud because everybody will hear. Like, all right, hold that back. But I'm like, you guys have got me thinking about a couple things, so we'll have to chat more privately about.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, absolutely,
definitely.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Zack. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, It's been a pleasure, and I will continue to listen to the podcast because you guys do great work. And I admire that, and I want to encourage you guys to never stop, never look back, and just keep chugging along, because it's like doing the Lord's work, man. We gotta get out there, and it's good. It's good. And I like your podcast. I think you guys do an amazing job. So keep it up.
Awesome.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. Cool. All right. We'll talk to everybody in the next episode.